I never imagined I'd be raising my granddaughter alone, but when my son Michael died in that terrible car accident 12 years ago, little Sarah was only 13 years old. Her mother had left when she was just a baby, so it was just the two of us. I was 63 at the time, recently retired from my contracting business, and suddenly I found myself learning how to braid hair, helping with algebra homework, and attending parent-teacher conferences all over again. Sarah was my second chance at fatherhood, and I like to think I did a better job the second time around. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in Boulder, Colorado, the same house where I'd raised Michael. The mountain views from our back porch became our evening ritual. We'd sit there together, her doing homework while I read the newspaper, the Rocky Mountains standing guard in the distance. She grew into an extraordinary young woman, smart, compassionate, driven. She got a full scholarship to the University of Colorado, studied environmental engineering, and by 25, she'd already made a name for herself working for a clean energy startup in Denver. The company went public last year, and Sarah's early equity stake meant she was suddenly worth over $18 million. I was so proud of her, not because of the money, but because she'd taken her father's death and turned it into fuel. She often told me that she went into renewable energy because she wanted to prevent the kind of accidents that took her dad from us. A drunk driver had crossed the center line on Highway 36 that night, and Michael never had a chance. 3 months ago, Sarah came home for Sunday dinner, like she did every week. She seemed tired, kept rubbing her temples. I asked if she was feeling all right. "Just headaches, Grandpa," she said, smiling that brilliant smile of hers. Probably staring at spreadsheets too much. 2 weeks later, she collapsed at work. The doctors found a brain aneurysm. They operated immediately, but there were complications. She slipped into a coma, and after 8 agonizing days, her doctors told me there was no brain activity left. My Sarah, my brilliant, beautiful Sarah, was gone at just 25 years old. The funeral was held at Boulder Community Church, the same place where we'd said goodbye to Michael. I stood at the front, looking out at the hundreds of people whose lives she'd touched in her short time on Earth. Colleagues, college friends, neighbors, members of the environmental advocacy groups she'd volunteered with. And that's when I saw him, Andrew Castellano, standing in the back, wearing an expensive black suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. He'd been Sarah's fiancé 3 years ago. They'd dated for 18 months, got engaged, and then suddenly, 6 months before the wedding, Sarah broke it off. She never told me exactly why, just said they wanted different things. I hadn't seen or heard from Andrew since. Sarah had moved on, focused on her career, and seemed happier than ever. She'd mentioned dating casually but said she wasn't in any rush. After the service, as people were gathering for the reception, Andrew approached me. He was tall, 32 years old, with slicked back dark hair and an air of confidence that always struck me as arrogance. "Edward," he said, extending his hand. "I'm so sorry for your loss." I shook his hand briefly. "Thank you for coming, Andrew." "Sarah and I may not have worked out, but I cared about her deeply," he said. His eyes were dry. I noticed he kept glancing around the room, studying people. "I imagine this is an incredibly difficult time for you." Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl, but I was too numb with grief to analyze it. I nodded and moved on to thank other mourners. The following Tuesday, Sarah's attorney, Jennifer Kim, called me to her office in Denver for the reading of the will. Sarah had been meticulous about her affairs. She'd updated her will just 6 months ago, Jennifer told me. I sat in the leather chair across from Jennifer's desk, still feeling like I was moving through fog. Everything since Sarah's collapse felt unreal. "Edward, Sarah left very clear instructions," Jennifer began, sliding a document across the desk. "The bulk of her estate, approximately $18.7 million after taxes and debts, goes to you." I stared at the number. It didn't feel real. I didn't want the money. I wanted my granddaughter back. "She also left specific amounts to several environmental charities," Jennifer continued. "And there's a letter here for you." She handed me an envelope with Sarah's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Grandpa, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and I'm so sorry I had to leave you. You've already lost Dad, and now me. I can't imagine what you're going through. The money is yours because you gave me everything when I had nothing. You were my father, my mother, my teacher, my friend. You worked extra years when you should have been retired, just to make sure I could go to college debt-free. You never complained, never made me feel like a burden. Use this to finally live the life you deserve. Travel, spoil yourself, maybe even find someone to share your golden years with. You've earned it 1,000 times over. I love you forever, Sarah. I couldn't see the rest of the letter through my tears. That's when everything changed. 1 week later, I received a certified letter from a law firm in Denver, Castellano and Associates. I opened it at my kitchen table, and my blood ran cold as I read. Dear Mr. Edward Morrison, this firm represents Mr. Andrew Castellano regarding the estate of Sarah Morrison. Mr. Castellano and Miss Castellano and Miss Castellano Morrison were in a common-law marriage at the time of her death, having cohabitated and presented themselves as married for a period exceeding the required threshold under Colorado law. As Miss Morrison's surviving spouse, Mr. Castellano is entitled to a statutory share of her estate, which we calculate to be 50% of all assets. We are prepared to pursue this claim in probate court if an amicable settlement cannot be reached. We propose a meeting to discuss terms. I had to read it 3 times before the words made sense. Common law marriage? They'd broken up 3 years ago. They never lived together that I knew of, and Sarah had been very clear in her will. I called Jennifer immediately. He's claiming what? She said, her voice sharp with anger. Edward, this is absurd. Colorado does recognize common law marriage, but there are specific requirements. They have to have cohabitated, mutually agreed to be married, and held themselves out as married to the community. Sarah broke up with him 3 years ago. Can he really do this? He can file the claim. Whether he can win is another matter entirely. She paused. But Edward, you need to know something. Andrew Castellano isn't just some jilted ex-boyfriend. His family owns Castellano Development Group. They're worth hundreds of millions. His father, Marcus Castellano, is one of the most ruthless real estate developers in Colorado. Then why would he need Sarah's money? I don't think this is about need, Jennifer said quietly. I think this is about ego and revenge. The lawsuit was filed 2 days later. Andrew's legal team was led by his father's personal attorney, Richard Vance, a shark who'd made his career burying people in legal fees until they gave up. They claimed that Sarah and Andrew had lived together for 14 months before their public engagement, that they'd filed joint tax returns, that Sarah had referred to Andrew as her husband to friends and colleagues, and that they'd only separated temporarily but never formally ended their common-law marriage. It was all lies. But Andrew came prepared with doctored lease agreements, fabricated testimony from people I'd never heard of, and carefully edited photos that made it look like they'd been together far more recently than they had. The first court hearing was brutal. Judge Patricia Simmons presided, a stern woman in her 60s who'd seen it all. Andrew's lawyer, Vance, painted a picture of young love torn apart by Sarah's mental instability and family interference. Mr. Morrison resented their relationship, Vance argued. He saw Andrew as a threat to his control over Sarah and her finances. When Sarah became successful, Edward worried he'd be cut out of her life entirely. I sat there, trembling with rage, as this stranger told lies about my relationship with my granddaughter. Jennifer fought back hard. Your Honor, this claim is not just unfounded, it's offensive. Sarah Morrison was not married to Mr. Castellano. They ended their relationship 3 years ago. The will she executed 6 months ago makes no mention of him whatsoever. If they were married, as he claims, why wouldn't she leave him anything? Perhaps she was coerced into changing the will, Vance suggested smoothly. Perhaps Edward Morrison exerted undue influence over a young woman who'd just been diagnosed with a serious medical condition. Mayav dropped. They were now claiming I'd manipulated Sarah while she was sick? The aneurysm hadn't even been discovered until weeks after she'd updated her will. Judge Simmons called for order. I'm setting a trial date for 8 weeks from now. Both parties will have time to gather evidence. Mr. Vance, I'm warning you now that I take fraud very seriously. If your client's claims turn out to be fabricated, there will be consequences. But Vance just smiled. We look forward to presenting our case, Your Honor. Walking out of the courthouse, Jennifer pulled me aside. Edward, I need you to tell me everything you know about Sarah and Andrew's relationship. Every detail. When they met, how long they dated, why they broke up, everything. She never told me the real reason, I admitted. Just said it wasn't working out. Did she seem scared? Relieved? Sad? I thought back. Relieved, actually. like a weight had been lifted. And she changed after that, became more herself, if that makes sense. Jennifer nodded slowly. Edward, I think there's more to this story, and I think Sarah might have left us clues. That night, I went through Sarah's room, which I'd kept exactly as she'd left it. Her desk, her bookshelf, her closet full of clothes I couldn't bring myself to donate yet. I was looking for anything that might help. In her desk drawer, beneath some old college notebooks, I found a journal. I hesitated before opening it. This felt like an invasion of her privacy. But she was gone, and I needed to protect her legacy. The entries started from when she first met Andrew at a Denver networking event. The early pages were full of excitement. He was charming, successful, shared her interests. But then, around month 9, the tone shifted. Andrew got angry today because I went to lunch with Mark from work. He said it looked inappropriate, but Mark is gay and married. I don't understand why A is so jealous. He keeps asking about my salary and equity, says we should combine our finances for the future. But we're not even engaged yet. Something feels off. I made a joke at dinner with his parents about how I'll out-earn Andrew someday. His father laughed, but Andrew grabbed my hand so hard under the table I thought he'd break my fingers. He apologized later, said he was stressed about work. Me hands shook as I read page after page. The picture became clearer. Andrew was controlling, possessive, and obsessed with money. When Sarah's startup started showing promise, his behavior got worse. He proposed tonight. I said yes because everyone was watching at the restaurant. But I feel sick. I don't want to marry him. I just don't know how to get out without him making it ugly. Then came the final entries. I told A I need space. He threatened to ruin me if I left him. Said his father has connections everywhere in Colorado and can make sure I never work in this state again. I'm scared. I finally did it. Broke the engagement. He was calm, too calm. Said I'd regret this, that he'd make sure I paid for wasting his time. Grandpa picked me up from Andrew's apartment because I was afraid to be alone with him. I didn't tell Grandpa why. Didn't want him to worry. It's been a week. Andrew keeps calling, texting. His messages are getting darker. He says I owe him for damages to his reputation. I'm going to file for a restraining order. There were no more entries after that. I checked the date. 3 years and 2 months ago. I called Jennifer immediately, even though it was past midnight. She was afraid of him, I told her. She tried to get a restraining order. There might be court records. The next morning, Jennifer had her investigator, a former Denver detective named Marcus Price, start digging. What he found made my blood boil. Sarah had filed for a restraining order 3 years ago. Andrew's father had immediately hired lawyers who buried her in motions and delays. They argued Sarah was being hysterical and vindictive about a normal breakup. Eventually, exhausted and wanting to move on, Sarah had dropped the petition. But Marcus Price found something else. Something Andrew and his lawyers didn't know existed. Sarah had been terrified enough that she'd installed security cameras in her apartment. Not the obvious kind. Tiny hidden cameras that recorded continuously to cloud storage. And she'd never canceled the subscription. The footage was still there. Hundreds of hours of it. Marcus spent 3 weeks reviewing everything, and then he called me and Jennifer to his office. His face was grave. "You need to see this," he said, pulling up a video dated 3 years ago, 2 days after Sarah broke the engagement. The footage showed Andrew letting himself into Sarah's apartment with a key. Sarah wasn't home. He went through her desk, her laptop, her filing cabinet. He was clearly looking for something. He was trying to find financial information, Marcus said. Look at what he's photographing with his phone. Bank statements, investment accounts, the equity agreement from her company. But wait, Marcus said, it gets worse. He fast-forwarded to footage from a week later. Andrew again, this time pulling something from his pocket, a small device. He installed it behind Sarah's computer. Keylogger, Marcus explained. He was monitoring everything she typed, passwords, emails, everything. Jennifer leaned forward. That's illegal. That's computer fraud, right there. We've got him on multiple felonies, Marcus agreed. Breaking and entering, theft, computer crimes. But there's more. He pulled up a different video. This one was from Sarah's dash cam. I didn't even know she had one. The footage was from 12 years ago. Late at night, Highway 36. Sarah had been following her father, my son Michael, who was driving home from visiting us. They'd been in separate cars that night. The video showed Michael's car ahead of Sarah's, and then another car, a dark SUV, coming up fast behind both of them. Too fast. Sarah must have been reviewing her old footage for some reason, Marcus said quietly. Maybe after the breakup, looking for anything Andrew might have tampered with, and she found this. The SUV pulled alongside Michael's car. It swerved, bumping Michael's vehicle. Michael's car lost control, spinning across the center line directly into oncoming traffic. The semi-truck hit him head-on. The SUV never stopped. But as it passed Sarah's car, her dash cam caught a clear shot of the license plate. Marcus pulled up a DMV record. That vehicle was registered to Castellano Development Group. It was reported stolen 3 days after the accident, which is convenient. But the police never investigated because they had a drunk driver who admitted fault. My vision went dark around the edges. The drunk driver was paid. Marcus finished. I tracked him down. He's been living in a very nice apartment in Pueblo for the last 12 years, all expenses paid by an LLC connected to the Castellano family. He confessed everything when I told him we had video evidence. Michael's death wasn't an accident. It was murder. And Sarah must have figured it out. I looked at Marcus with tears streaming down my face. Why didn't she go to the police? She did, he said softly, pulling up another file. 8 months ago, she filed a report with the Denver PD, gave them everything. But the case was assigned to Detective Roy Hansen. Jennifer cursed under her breath. Hansen is Marcus Castellano's brother-in-law. The report was buried, Marcus confirmed, marked as insufficient evidence and closed. Sarah must have realized the Castellanos had too much power, so she did something smarter. He pulled up Sarah's updated will. She changed this 6 months ago, right after the police buried her report. And look at this clause here. Jennifer read it aloud. In the event of any legal challenge to this will, all evidence gathered by me regarding the circumstances of my father's death shall be immediately released to federal authorities and the media. Sarah had created a dead man's switch. If Andrew came after her money, the truth about Michael would come out. She was protecting you, Marcus said to me. She knew if something happened to her, Andrew would try to claim her estate. And when he did, the evidence would automatically be released. But there was still more. Marcus pulled up Sarah's medical records, which he'd subpoenaed. The aneurysm that killed Sarah? The doctors said it was a congenital condition, could rupture at any time. But look at her records from 3 months before she died. He showed us a CT scan from a routine checkup. No aneurysm. Nothing. Her brain was completely healthy. Jennifer went pale. That's impossible. Aneurysms don't form that quickly without trauma. Exactly, Marcus said. I spoke with her doctors. They admitted they were confused by how suddenly it appeared. And then I found this. He showed us Sarah's credit card records. 3 months before her death, there was a charge to a Denver clinic. Marcus had visited the clinic. She went in for what she thought was a B12 shot, he said. The clinic has since closed down, but I found the nurse who administered it. She was paid $10,000 to inject Sarah with something else, something that would cause a delayed brain hemorrhage. My world stopped spinning. Andrew killed her, I whispered. We believe so, Marcus said. But it's going to be hard to prove. The nurse is scared to testify. The clinic destroyed its records. But between the videos, the paid drunk driver, and Sarah's own investigation, we have enough to expose what the Castellanos have done. The trial date arrived. The courtroom was packed with media. Somehow word had leaked about what this case really involved. Andrew sat at the plaintiff's table, looking confident in his $1,000 suit. His father, Marcus Castellano, sat behind him, silver-haired and intimidating. Richard Vance shuffled papers, preparing his opening statement. Judge Simmons called the court to order. Vance stood. Your Honor, this is a simple case of a common-law spouse claiming his rightful share of— Actually, Your Honor, Jennifer interrupted, standing. This is a case of fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and one of the most elaborate criminal schemes this court has ever seen. The courtroom exploded in whispers. Judge Simmons banged her gavel. That's a serious accusation, Miss Kim. I have serious evidence, Your Honor. I'd like to play Video Exhibit A. For the next 4 hours, we presented everything. The hidden camera footage of Andrew breaking into Sarah's apartment, the keylogger, the dashcam footage of Michael's murder, the paid drunk driver's confession, the medical records, the nurse's written statement, and finally, we played Sarah's own video, the one we'd found in her cloud storage, recorded 1 week before she collapsed. Sarah sat in her apartment, looking directly at the camera. She looked tired but determined. If you're watching this, it means Andrew has done something to me, or is trying to claim my estate, she said. I want everyone to know the truth. Andrew Castellano and his family murdered my father 12 years ago because Dad's construction company was competing with Castellano Development for a major contract. They made it look like an accident. She held up documents, showing them to the camera, police reports, dash cam footage, financial records. I have proof of everything. I tried to go to the police, but the Castellanos have them in their pocket, so I'm documenting it all here. And I'm leaving everything to the person who actually deserves it. My grandfather, Edward Morrison, the man who raised me and loved me unconditionally. Her voice cracked. Andrew, if you're watching this, you didn't win. You never loved me. You loved what I represented: money, status, control. And when you couldn't control me anymore, you decided to kill me, just like you killed my dad. She looked directly into the camera. But I'm smarter than you thought. And Grandpa, if you're seeing this, I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you while I was alive. I was trying to protect you. I love you. Make them pay. The video ended. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. I looked across the aisle at Andrew. His face had gone white. His lawyer had his head in his hands. Marcus Castellano was already standing to leave, probably to call his attorneys. Judge Simmons spoke in a voice like ice. Bailiff, please detain Mr. Andrew Castellano and Mr. Marcus Castellano. I'm calling the district attorney immediately. The federal investigation took 4 months. In the end, Andrew was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, computer crimes, and a dozen other charges. His father faced even more, including obstruction of justice and witness tampering. The drunk driver flipped on them entirely in exchange for a reduced sentence. The trial for Michael's murder was open and shut. The dashcam footage combined with the driver's testimony was damning. Andrew and his father were both convicted. Andrew got 40 years. His father got 25. The civil case was dismissed immediately, of course. Sarah's estate was mine, just as she'd intended. I stood in the courtroom after the final verdict, holding the letter Sarah had left me. Jennifer stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder. She saved you, Jennifer said quietly. Even after death, she was still protecting you. I nodded, unable to speak. I used some of Sarah's money to establish the Michael and Sarah Morrison Foundation, dedicated to helping families affected by corrupt law enforcement and providing resources for people trying to escape abusive relationships. The rest I put in trust for future generations, hoping someday there would be more Morrisons to carry on their legacy. But on quiet evenings, I still sit on that back porch in Boulder, looking out at the Rocky Mountains. I imagine Sarah beside me, doing her homework, and Michael, coming up the driveway after a long day of work. They're both gone. But because of Sarah's courage and intelligence, they got justice, and I got to make sure that their memories would help others facing the same kind of evil that took them from me. Andrew Castellano thought he could steal from my granddaughter. He thought he could kill her and get away with it, just like he'd killed her father. He messed with the wrong family.